Yesterday we started on the bottom of Tes Amud Beis with the sugya of Zroim, specifically Orla and Ravai, the third and the fourth years since the production of fruit on the tree. And we're going to start today on Daf Yud, but just to sort of take an easy takeoff, remember the brisa at the bottom of Daf Tes Amud Beis, that there's a difference between a netiya that was planted 30 days before Aleph Tishrei or within the 30-day period of Aleph Tishrei, meaning on Tesvav El, for example. In the case where you planted a tree a full month before Rosh Hashana, the brisa records that also Lo Shana, so you have that 30-day period from, let's say, Rosh Chodesh El until Aleph Tishrei, and that's Olelo L'Shana. That's considered like one full year in the counting of the 3 years of Orla, which means that we're going to get to the point of Heder that much faster. We won't need a full 3 years because 1 month is considered like a year. And the Bryce applies this to Shvius. So we're going to start now on Daf Yudam and Aleph. And the Bryce goes back to the case of a tree that was planted. Netiya was 30 days before. Peros Netiya Zo, the fruits of this Netiya, Asurim ad Chamisha Sar B'Shvat. So you planted a tree 30 days before Aleph Tishrei. And we're going to count that as one full year. Now we have from that first Aleph Tishrei, 30 days later, to the next Aleph Tishrei, we have year number 2. Then we get to Aleph Tishrei of year number 3. We would have said that once you get to Aleph Tishrei of year number 3, then the Peros are no longer oral. And that would be considered the 4th year, which is Ravat. And the same we would apply in the 4th year going into the 5th year. It would be Ravai and not, it would be Ravai up till the 4th Aleph Tishrei, but from the 4th Aleph Tishrei and on, it becomes Chulin. But our Rice is establishing that there's another Rosh Hashana Li'Ilanos, which is called Tu B'Shvat, or according to Beis Aleph Shvat. What happens is, let's say he plants on Rosh Chodesh El or earlier, now he goes through 2 full cycles of Rosh Hashana from Aleph Tishrei to Aleph Tishrei and back to Aleph Tishrei. He's now in the 4th year, and yet it's still Orla. Why would it be Orla in the 4th year up until Tu B'Shvat? Because the peros of this tree had what's called Chanota, which will explain what Chanota is. After Aleph Tishrei, before Tu B'Shvat, during that period of time from Rosh Hashanah until Tu B'Shvat, the peros reached the stage of Chanota. And the reason for that is because the rains have already fallen, most of the rains of that rainy season, that winter season, and therefore the tree is now producing its fruits. So the chiddush here is that we would have thought that since he counts that month of El after he planted the tree as one full year, and now he's gone through 2 additional full years, then he's already finished with Orla. And again, if you just push it down 1 more year, it's finished with Ravah. But no, Bryce is saying that we're going to have to wait until Tu B'Shvat, until we completely exit from the Orla situation, or Tu B'Shvat of the 5th year, before we exit from Ravah. So any payers that had Chanota, after that Aleph Tishrei, which would have been, we're already in the fourth year in the case of Orla. Nevertheless, if it reaches Chanota, then it's still considered Orla, stretching into the fourth year until Tu B'Shvat. Now, it would seem to me, and again, this requires a lot more research, that the advantage of calculating the 30 days of El before Aleph Tishrei, since that Natiyah has one full year, is that now, once he gets to Tu B'Shvat, into the fourth year, he's finished. As opposed to a case where he plants within 30 days before Aleph. Let's say he plants on the 15th of El, for example. In such a case, he needs 3 full years of Aleph Tishrei to Aleph Tishrei, because the 2 weeks before Aleph Tishrei, after he planted on the 15th of El, are not considered, they're not Ola L'Shana. So he can only count his first year of Orla starting with Aleph Tishrei. So you go Aleph Tishrei to Aleph Tishrei and Aleph Tishrei to Aleph Tishrei. And now you have a third full year because you only planted on the 15th of El. Had you planted on the 30th of, let's say, Av, or the 1st of El, you have a full 30 days since the Natiyah, and that's Ol L'Shana Achas, then although we're going to have problems all the way up to Tu B'Shvat of the fourth year, but nevertheless you gain that period of time from Tu B'Shvat till Al Tishrei, as a result of the fact that 30 days is Ol L'Shana. And again, this whole discussion is about a case where the Chanata of the parents took place beyond Aleph Tishrei, before Tu B'Shvat. So we're extending Orla all the way till Tu B'Shvat, effectively in the fourth year, because again, the first year, if you planted 30 days before Rosh Hashanah, it was followed by a second year and a third year. And therefore, with the following Rosh Hashanah ending, that whole year ending, he's now in the fourth year. Yet, if the Chanot took place then before Tu B'Shvat, it's also until Tu B'Shvat, it still has the status of Orla. And that's what the Brisa says, Imli Orla, Orla, Imli Ravai, Ravai. Now Rashi explains that the status of these fruits really are hybrid, in a sense that it's a complex twofold status. There's what you call a Natiyah, and then there's what's called an Elon. So the Natiyah will, the status of the Natiyah is such that we count those 30 days after the planting before Rosh Hashanah, right? The 30 days starting, let's say, with Rosh Chodesh Elul, we count that as one full year. That's Natiyah. And that Natiyah, we call it a sapling in English. I don't know, that's probably not an accurate translation. But anyway, that Natiyah takes us into the second year, then into the third year. But now when the Peros reach the state of Chanata, now we're no longer talking about a Natiyah. At this point, there's a transition into a status called an Elon. And so there are two dinim of Rosh Hashanah. There's one din of Rosh Hashanah which is called Aleph Tishrei. And as far as that din of Rosh Hashanah is concerned, we're dealing with a Natiyah, and 30 days is considered a full year. But then there's a different din of Rosh Hashanah Lilanos, and that's called Tu B'Shvat Beperos HaElon. We're no longer talking about a Natiyah. We've already completed the Rosh Hashanah Natiyah, and 3 years have passed because we counted the first 30 days after the planting as one full year. But nevertheless, even though as far as the Natiyah is concerned, we passed Rosh Hashanah of year 3, we have a new din of Rosh Hashanah with regard to Elon, because now the fruits on the tree have no longer the status of Peres HaNatiyah, the Peres HaElon, and Peres HaElon have the Rosh Hashanah of Tu B'Shvat. Now, what happens in the case where he planted within 30 days of Rosh Hashanah, meaning on the 15th of El? And here we don't have the principle of Miktas Shana Ola Kishana. So that means the first year of Orla is going to begin on Aleph Tishrei. So we go from Aleph Tishrei to Aleph Tishrei. Now we've entered into the second year. From Aleph Tishrei to the next Aleph Tishrei, we've entered into the third year. And the third year takes you till Aleph Tishrei the next year. Do you have to wait until Tu B'Shvat? Rashi says no. And the way the Rosh understands Rashi, and it's a whole pilpul about how to understand Rashi, but according to this understanding of Rashi, if you have 3 full years of Aleph Tishrei to Aleph Tishrei, then for sure we don't have to extend all the way till Tu B'Shvat. The only time we have to extend till Tu B'Shvat, according to Rashi Shita, is when you planted a full month before Rosh Chodesh El. Before Rosh Hashana Aleph Tishrei, on Rosh Chodesh El. In that case, since you didn't have a full year, but just we counted as a year, because Mikzas Shana is Ol Shana, then we slap you with the chumrah of having to wait until Tu B'Shvat. But if you have 3 full years from Aleph Tishrei to Aleph Tishrei, again and again 3 times, then any payros, even if they reach Chanata after Aleph Tishrei before Tu B'Shvat, are already out of the category of Orla. So in a funny sort of sense, if we have a planting that's less than 30 days before Rosh Chodesh El, before Rosh Hashana, we have a kula. And the kula is that when we hit Aleph Tishrei on the 3rd round, that's going to be the last year of Orla, and we don't extend Orla till Tu B'Shvat. We only extend Orla till Tu B'Shvat when you planted a month before Aleph Tishrei, and when we apply the principle that's also Lo L'Shana. So we would make it bit Lasso, and now we're going to be Machmir B'Sofa. That's Rashi Shita, and the Baal Amar disagrees with this entirely. And according to the Baal Amar, we always have to wait until Tu B'Shvat, whether or not you planted 30 days before Rosh Hashanah or within the 30-day period before. We're always going to extend Orla till Tu B'Shvat. That's the sheet of the Baal Amar. So the Gemara now asks Minani Bili, what's the source in the Torah that in addition to the Rosh Hashanah of Aleph Tishrei, we have another Rosh Hashanah which extends into the 4th year in the case of Orla, and that's Tu B'Shvat. Omer Rabbi Chia, Barabba Rabbi Yochanan, Motu Beisam inclined Mishmei de Rabbi Yanai. Omar Kra, the Torah says, I'll read the whole pasuk, this is in Parshas Kedoshim, Shalosh Shanim Yelochem Arelim Lo Yochel, Bashana Revi'is. Bashana Chamishis. Notice the vav of U. That's a chibur that tells you that the first 3 years extend into the 4th year, and the 4th year extends into the 5th year. Ba'amin Shibur Revi'is. You could have a case where you're already in the 4th year, V'adayin Asur Mishum Orla, because we just finished saying that Bashana Revi'is extends Orla from the 3rd year into the 4th year. And in addition to that, you could have something that's in the 5th year that's Nadir, and yet Adayin Asur Mishum Revad into the 5th year, because we extend the 4th year to the 5th year. And that's a source for another Rosh Hashanah going into the next year. Again, it doesn't tell you anything about Tu B'Shvat. That already depends upon Rov Gishamim and the Machlokas Shri Beis Hillel Beit Shammai. Okay. Now, what we're going to discuss at this point is what's called klita. We think of the word klita in terms of people who come in Aliyah. But here we're talking about klita means at what point when you plant a sapling, does it become already natua? It's niklat. Niklat means it's already in the karka. The Gemara is assuming right now, it's going to change its mind soon, that the klita in the karka is immediate. As soon as you plant the tree, there's an immediate klita. So the Gemara says, Lema delo ki Rabbi Meir. Shall we assume that our Mishnah is against Rabbi Meir? Te'i Rabbi Meir ha'amar yom echad b'shana chashiv shana. A single day in a year is considered a full year. And therefore, how could our Mishnah say that it all depends upon 30 days, the Bryce, I should say. right? 30 days. In order to get a full year, you need 30 days from Rosh Chodesh Elul to Rosh Chodesh Tishrei. Why? One day, let's say the 29th of Elul should be the Sanya. Now we're going to prove that Rebbe Meir holds that Yom Echad B'Shana Chashav Shana Har HaOmer B'Torah Stam. Okay, so there are three categories of animals that we're focusing our attention on. And they're all different stages in the development of a cow. So he says here in the footnotes, there's something called Egel ben Bakar, and that appears, Rashi says, in the parasha of Miluim. On the 8th day of Miluim, the pasuk says that Aaron brought an Egel ben Bakar for a chatos. He also brought an ayil liola, tmimim. Now the word tmimim connects Egel ben Bakar with ayil. Both are tmimim. And the Sifra has a drasha that since the word tmimim is common to both Egel ben Bakar and to ayil, it's teaching us that they are both shavim b'shanim, meaning they both have the same age. What is that age? An ayil is ben shtei shanim, and therefore an Egel ben Bakar is also ben shtei shanim. So Egel ben Bakar means that it's 2 years old. Now we get to a par. A par is older than an Egel ben Bakar, and a par is going to be 3 years old. So we have something called an Egel, we have an Egel ben Bakar, and then we have a par, all in the parish of Karbonos. An Egel is 1 year old, also a Keves is 1 year old. An Egel ben Bakar, we derive from the parish of Miluim, is 2 years old, and a par is 3 years old. The Sanya, we learned that the rice of par ha'omer b'Torah stam. If the Torah doesn't tell you how old the par is or has to be, then it's been esrim v'arba chodesh b'yom echad to be Rabbi Meir. Once we go 1 day into its 3rd year, it's no longer an Egel ben Bakar. It now gains the status of a par. Rabbi Elazar Omer ben esrim v'arba v'arba chodesh u'shloshim yom. What's the machlokes? Rabbi Meir holds that Yom Echad is Ola L'Shana, Chashiv Shana. And Rabbi Elazar holds that you need a full month of 30 days in order to be Ola L'Shana. Our Mishnah here, our Brisa here, with regard to Orla, seems to be reflective of the sheet of Rabbi Elazar against Rabbi Meir. Because why would he have to talk about planting a full 30 days before Rosh Hashanah? Why wouldn't it be sufficient, according to Rabbi Meir, of 1 day before Rosh Hashanah? Shali Rabbi Meir Omer, Kol Makom Shenevar Egel Batorah Stam. So if it doesn't say Egel ben Bakar, then it's a ben Shana, it's 1 year old, which means it's up to 1 year old. It's within the first year since its birth. That's called an Egel Stam. And now we go on to an Egel ben Bakar. That's ben Shtayim. That's already 2 years old, meaning it has the same age as the ayil, as we saw before, because we dash for its bimim. And par ben Bakar, that's ben Shalosh. So once it's 24 months old and 1 year, it's already out of the category of Egel ben Bakar into the category of a par. Because Yom Echad B'Shana, 1 day into the third year is considered like a shana. Rabbi Elazar, on the other hand, holds that you need 30 days in order to be considered a shana, and therefore you only leave the status of Egel ben Bakar and enter into the status of par when it's 24 months plus another 30 days. So it comes out according to Rabbi Meir that 1 day or alone is considered a shana. The brisa that says that we don't consider it a year unless it was a full 30 days planted before Rosh Hashanah, that must reflect the Shita Rabbi Elazar. And the Gemara rejects this. Afilu Tema Rabbi Meir, you can present the following logic. Now, this is going to be a very compelling logic, but the Gemara is going to reject it. Chika Amar Rabbi Meir Yom Echad B'Shana Chashav Shana B'Sof Shana. Notice he's the par, or the Egel ben Bakar, has already had 2 years, and now we're going into the third year. That's the sof. And that's where Rabbi Meir says that 1 day at the end of this counting is considered like the year. Aval b'tchilas shana, in the first year when you're counting the shanim, then you need a full 30 days, even according to Rabbi Meir. Meaning, if, let's say, Arla, you want to count the first year of Arla, Rabbi Meir didn't say that 1 day is enough. He concedes to the position here of Rabbi Elazar that it's not considered a full year unless you have a minimum of 30 days. And in a sense, this is reminiscent, if I could make this, we call it in Yiddish a Zustand. This reminds me of Avelus, right? You have 7 days of Avelus, and at the end of the Avelus, we apply the principle of Miktzas Hayom Kekulo. So that's when you're being mashlim, right? If you're concluding a melos, accounting, a minyan, then at the end. But in the case of Arla, it's the beginning, and there we don't have the principle of Rabbi Meir that Yom Echad is all Shana. That's the Havamin of the Gemara. Amar Rava says no. The lav kal v'chomer. I'm going to prove to you with the logic of the kal v'chomer that on the contrary, if you can consider Yom Echad as a shana at the end of your counting, at the end of the years, then for sure it goes without saying that you could begin the counting with 1 day and consider it a full year. And what's the basis for this kal v'chomer? It's going to be nida. Now the Torah says in Nida, in Vayikra Tesvav, Shiv'as Yomim Tiyeh B'nidasa. And the Gemara Pesachim Daf Tzadi derives from this that the entire 7th day of her Nidus is Litumasa. She's considered Tmei and Nida. The earliest time she can go to mikveh to be Matayr herself is after the 7th day is completely passed. However, in order to count the 7 days, if she became a nida a little bit before Shkiyas HaChama, that's already considered the first of the 7 days. So on the contrary, it's easier to say that a shorter period is considered like a longer period when you talk about the beginning than when you talk about the end, because in nida, ain't Tchilas Hayom Olala B'Sofa, but Sof Hayom Olala B'Tchilas. In Nida, we see the exact opposite, says Rav, that you don't say Tchilas Hayom at the end of her counting of 7 days. She has to wait the entire 7th day before she goes to be Mataris. But nevertheless, as far as establishing the first day of the 7 days of Nida, then Sof Hayom is enough. If she sees Dam right before Shkiyas HaChama, that's considered a full day. And now she counts another 6 days of Nidus, and then at the end of the 7th day, after the entire 7th day passes, then and only then can she be Matayr herself. Is therefore Shana Sheyom Echad Olol B'Sof. If there's a halacha of 1 day is considered like a full year, then it makes more sense to say that that applies to the beginning of the counting than it does to the end. Because we said that in Nida, we have this halacha of Sof Hayom Olala B'Tchilasa at the beginning of the year, B'Tchilasa, at the beginning of the 7 days, but not at the end. And the Kal V'chomer ends here on the top of Yudam Beis, Eino Din, Sheyom Echad Ola Bitchilasa.